Hi, welcome to this week's edition of Blue Talk. Again, John, Dave and myself. We're going to look back over Leinster's victory against the Cheetahs last weekend, all the other Pro 14 action. Look forward to the Pro 14 games this weekend and, of course, Ireland's match against France in the Viva. So, lads, 19-7 against the Cheetahs, that we've now guaranteed a home semi-final in the Pro 14, which is pretty good. But we made heavy weather. I know it was a terrible evening, but we made heavy weather of that game.
Well, I think heavy weather is actually one of the key phrases because it was pretty heavy weather.
Great album.
In fairness, the Cheetahs actually came with a game plan. I mean, they knew what they were doing out there. They did manage to restrict us. They had a big pack.
The kicking was terrible, wasn't it?
The kicking was effective. It stopped us doing anything. We had to play so much of the game in our own half of the pitch.
Yeah.
They kind of knew what they were doing.
Yeah, I think it also illustrated, like, the weather was obviously a huge leveller, and it always is. Like, back in the 90s, we always used to pray for rain when Ireland were playing, but...
when anyone was playing.
But the Cheetahs, it shows that the Cheetahs are a level above our previous weeks, the Kings.
Yeah.
They really are. And they were a very committed team as well. Like, they were stuck in from minute one to minute whatever. Now, okay, they should have had a guy sent off. Fair enough.
That's putting it mildly.
But, that I didn't hear. Was he cited? Does he?
I haven't heard, actually. It's only Monday, so
yeah.
I haven't heard. I presume he would be.
Yeah, you'd have to think so. That could have ruined the game, but it didn't. I mean, let's face it, lads. We got what we wanted out of it. We didn't need a bonus point. We got the win. Job done. Season sealed. But yeah, the guys. I think it's a lot of teams come to the RDS and give up. They didn't. Like the Dragons, or on occasion, Cardiff Blues used to give up a lot.
Yeah.
The Kings, you could probably accuse of it, and the Italian teams used to. Obviously, not anymore.
Those lads are on a mammoth tour, aren't they? Like they're playing up in the Northern Hemisphere again next weekend.
The 3 weeks, three matches, 3 match weekends.
But that's nearly a month they're up here, right?
Yeah.
They have it very hard. Like that's what I'm about to say. Like the Cheetahs were decimated at the end. Their coach and all their decent players went at the end of last season, where they had a decent enough first season to get into the playoffs. And then they were pulled apart. So the fact that they're that committed at this point in the season is, it's pretty impressive. They're not going to trouble the playoffs, even though they've got 3 home games at the end.
Yeah, I still think that they could be in
too far behind.
I wouldn't. I mean, what are they? 6 points off it?
Oh, they're more than that.
No, I don't think they are. I think they're 6 points off third.
Are they?
Well,
you have it there.
Well, they're in 6th position.
They're 3 points behind the Ospreys.
I don't know what.
I think they're only 6 points behind third. I mean, they're not.
I think it's more like 11, but
no.
I'll look it up while you're talking.
But just to say, like, that goes back to what I say. Cheetahs had a plan. They stuck to it. I mean, the plan was. I mean, a lot of teams make a token show of resistance and then let us do what we want to do. Cheetahs weren't like that. They had a good, strong pack.
But they were lucky when they played us. They played us in the middle of the Six Nations when we've
that's true.
Made major changes in personnel. You know what I mean? Like they're Like if they were playing our first team, I think that could be a whopping.
Or 11 points
possibly,
off,
but
off
I mean,
third. Yeah.
But I mean, we wouldn't play our first team against Cheetahs anyway. I mean, we had them last year down in Bloemfontein. We didn't play our first team,
but that's going on tour, Dave. Like
I know, but
no, I think it depends on
it's league play, Jake.
It depends on when you get them. Like if you get them at a certain time when all the players are available. Like for instance, at the start of the season, we brought Johnny Sexton over to Scarlets. So do you know what I mean? Depends when the players are available to be selected.
Yeah, but that's the nature of league play in the Pro 14. You have to manage. You have to and as a club, you organise your games that way.
Fair enough. But I just think that
because
we're playing quite a young, inexperienced team that there wouldn't be many in that selection that went out on Friday evening that would make our first team in the quarterfinal.
Quite likely that's the case, but we're not playing them in the quarterfinal in Europe. We're playing them in the Pro 14, and then you kind of have to. I know you can say that. Oh well, if we were playing them in the quarterfinal, but we weren't, and that's the nature of league play. You're going to have games when you're going to be without players. You're going to You're going to have to organise your game so you take on your stronger opponents when you have a stronger team. The teams that might feel a bit weaker will want to take you on when you're weak. That's what feeds into the whole thing about a league.
Mm-hmm.
Just, I suppose, expand on that point on the league. Is it getting a little bit... Like, they brought more teams in. There's rumours now that there's going to be more South African teams joining in.
Possibly.
Are we just spreading the talent too thin?
They're a team who have twice the amount of trophies of the next best region. Like the Scarlets have 2 Pro 14s. Cardiff have, or Pro 12s or whatever they were. Cardiff have 2 Amlins. Ospreys have 4 Celtic League / Pro 12 Magners, whatever the hell. So they're the most successful region. They've the biggest shirt sales of any region. In fact, I think they're second. I saw recently they're second to Munster, in the islands, in these 2 islands, in terms of shirt sales.
Really?
I think that's a very old statistic.
Could
I
be.
think that's maybe 10 years ago. 10 years ago when Ospreys were, were going really well.
Well,
they were selling a lot of jerseys, and I do remember that statistic.
Maybe
but I think
you're
that
right.
was a long time ago.
Maybe you're right, but
Well, maybe not a long time ago, but 10 years ago is a long time.
well, that's definitely true. I thought it was a little bit more current than that, but it seemed to be like the one true region. It seemed to be a success story in regional rugby, because like Clonettley wasn't really a region. Scarlets, it's kind of they kind of stood alone. Cardiff kind of stood alone. They picked up the bits of the Celtic Warriors, but they basically were standalone. Even the Dragons,
the bits from the Celtic Warriors legged it as soon because they wanted nothing to do with Cardiff.
That's fair enough. But all I'm saying is the one really successful region has been the Ospreys, as in terms of being a region.
Yeah.
Like, it merged 2 bitter rivals, Neath and Swansea, and made a region. Okay, well, I'm sure it wasn't all plain sailing the whole way, but they did bloody well. And now the fact that they're the one that are getting axed, it's political rather than anything else. I mean, on performance, you'd obviously axe the Dragons, and merge them with Cardiff. But
just speaking,
nobody would be happy with that.
Speaking of of their lowly positions in the league, now, I know there's 4 matches to go, and currently both the best position, both Cardiff and Scarlets are at 4th. The Ospreys are 5th in their conference, and the Dragons are last. And when you see the national team, been unbeaten in 12 or 13, whatever it is, test matches.
Yeah.
It's incredible that the provincial teams are doing so poorly.
Yeah, well, what does it say? Does it say Warren Gatland is a genius, or what is it?
Well, I remember having that discussion here, not like maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, when we were talking about the Irish teams doing pretty well between in Europe and the Pro 14 or Pro 12 at the time, and the national team kind of falling asunder under Kidney. And the converse of that was kind of true with the Welsh teams, that they're with the exception of the Ospreys, they did have a couple of league wins, but didn't really do much in Europe. But still, Gatland got a couple of Grand Slams with them.
If there are Welsh players with as many Grand Slam medals as Ireland has in its history, or Scotland for that matter,
For sure.
So
I think as well. I mean, for whatever reason, over the last, since the diminution of the actual club game in Wales, I think that the national team has taken an inordinate amount of precedence over the regions. That
of course,
that a player's identity hasn't really bound himself to the identity of the professional rugby player in Wales hasn't really bound itself to a region yet, or the regional identity and the player identity hasn't come together the way it is in Ireland.
It's interesting,
but the national identity is still as strong, and it just shows that that's almost a more damning indictment of the regions. The fact that they have been so poor in Europe and stuff like that, when you consider that they have all this talent available to them, or could have all this talent available to them if they were properly run.
And even when you see players that leave one province, go to England or France, and then they come back, but they don't come back to their original province. Yeah. Like George North, for example. Whereas we would just expect, if Johnny Sexton goes, or even if Simon Zebo goes and he comes back.
Marty Moore,
that's fair enough, that's a good point. But Marty Moore went because there's the current Irish Lions prop is there in front of him. But, whereas North is coming back as the man from still in the national team and so on. but he didn't come back to his own original team, which is quite different than in
I
Ireland.
don't know. You know, try saying that to Alan Wynne Jones. There's a guy who looks like he's fairly committed to his
Yeah, but
region.
he's the outlier.
Maybe
He is the exception. You like you say, the amount of guys who've gone and come back to other province or other regions, who've gone and not bothered to come back.
There was like your man that played for Toulon, the fullback, Lee Halfpenny.
Lee Halfpenny.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He was
Cardiff.
Cardiff and he went off to Scarlets. You know, I mentioned George North going the other way. He went from Scarlets to
Ospreys.
Ospreys. It's something that I don't think we would be too familiar with. I can understand Marty Moore because, you know, he kind of, his face mightn't have fitted in Leinster, I don't know, and he wanted some change. But generally speaking,
What about Beth Lynch going to Gloucester and coming back to the Dragons? That was a funny one too.
Beth Lynch.
Right, yeah, sorry, Richard
Pat
Hibbard.
Butcher. You mean Pat Butcher?
Richard Hibbard.
You meant Pat Butcher. He's gotten his soap opera landladies wrong, so he has.
Oh well,
I went to a fancy dress as Pat Butcher once.
good man. That's
Yeah, just started to throw that in there.
I'm glad we have that out in the open now.
Moving swiftly on.
Okay, well, one thing we didn't actually touch on last week was the good news that Scott Fardy re-signed for another season. You know, there was a few rumours going around that he might have been heading off to Wasps. I don't know how true or fake they were, but he signed on
He's
the dotted
here.
line for another year, which is great news.
Yeah.
I'd say the story about him going to Wasps, I mean, or whatever story it was, could well have had a certain grain of truth in it, in as much as Wasps were prepared to offer him a multi-year contract, whereas the RFU's policy, and it's been fairly widely discussed at this point, is that once players reach a certain age, they're only going to get a year.
Yeah.
So he was only he had a choice, but he chose us, which is great. And he's a super player for us,
Yeah.
really
He
is.
got lots of plaudits from his teammates as well.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
And his manager.
And his manager, yeah. So it's great. It's great signing for us. I
Yeah,
mean,
he's one of those guys though where you don't need a teammate or a manager to say, oh, well, he does all this work behind the scenes and all that, because you can see on the pitch what he does.
Mm-hmm.
You can see it. I mean, he's such a leader, so experienced, so clever, a good footballer as well. He's a brilliant guy to have around.
Yeah.
Dave, do you have the tries?
I do.
Will we
Jess.
have a quick go at those?
You've a goo on you for a try, have you?
This Ox Inche was already in the bin at this stage.
Yeah.
Um,
So we were always going to maul this one.
They were quite clever with how they took down the things. I mean,
Yeah.
that wasn't clever. I've always thought this about South African out halves. They come in two flavours. One, absolute wall of a crash tackler.
Butch.
Yeah, like Butch. Or two, don't bother at all. And there's no in between. Your man is from the don't bother at all school.
That's someone else's job. That's
Yeah.
why you have flankers, isn't it?
That was, yeah, just let me assist you over the line,
Yes.
sir. But in fairness,
The bare minimum, isn't it?
Yeah. Now he's not as bad as Urza Paletta. Was it Urza Paletta that time for Castra, who actually dived out of the way of a tackle, if you remember, in Europe against us one the years.
still, Conor O'Brien takes a bit of stopping.
No, he does.
He's
Yeah,
turned into a fine little player.
yeah, he
hasn't
really is. Yeah, yeah. Not so little.
No, not so little.
Great hands here from Rory O'Loughlin. Yeah,
Super. Adam Byrne is in great form with the feet.
he's in
isn't
really
he?
good
Did
form at the
really
moment.
well to get that down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But he's in really good form at the moment. He's played well in the last couple of games he's played.
Mhm. He just seems to, the feet just seem to be electric. Whatever he's doing,
He's impressing
He's
Schmidt
making-
as well. He's getting
Yeah.
brought into extended squads as well, isn't he?
that was a real spur of the moment pass. Because he had a man running in behind him, as you can see there, but went for the long skip pass.
It was nicely done. Nicely finished.
It was. And his own one now coming up is a bit of a wonder try.
Nice bit of football involved, all right.
Here we go. Right, what I do, I'll chip him. And I'll just tap it on a little bit. What a soccer skills are they? That
Yeah, it
was
was nice.
lovely little
The
dribble.
thing to notice is the reason he had so much space that he had kind of a bit of time so he could think about what he was doing is because every passer inside him committed their man. So there was nobody coming across on the drift. That gave him that extra little bit of time.
Yeah, it was 1-on-1.
It reminded me of O'Driscoll against Wasps
Yeah.
Yeah.
about 10 or
And he
years
didn't even
ago.
have the benefit of Jeremy Staunton there.
That was the one where he did a double kick, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He volleyed it when you, yeah.
Yeah, it was a nice
It was up the other end of the ground, on
Yeah,
the same
corner,
side.
wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, you could watch that quite a lot, couldn't you?
Yeah, it was a nice bit of football, all right. You know,
Yeah,
it was.
Robert.
It was a functional win, and now, you know, we basically get to put our feet up and.
For sure. Like we've won 15 of our 17 games. We're on 72 points, 22 ahead of Treviso, and guaranteed a home semi-final.
Yeah.
Like that's very. Like, they
Thank you
could,
very much.
they could go out and play their under 20s now for the next 4 games and give them a bit of game time if they want.
Well, they should be smart about how they do it. I mean, okay, they can afford to bring in guys who need game time. They can afford Imby coming back from injury. They can literally pick teams just tailored to a purpose. And you know, some of that purpose is going to be keeping guys taking over. Like you're not going to just rest everybody for 4 games and then they're going to come back in.
Especially with the Ulster game looming.
Exactly. So you got to build a bit of coherence there, a bit of consistency, and maybe develop a bit of a team because you've only got 1 game before Ulster.
Yeah.
We did have a question about that from our Scottish friend Murdo. I'll just
Man, Murdo.
because it's kind of a.
Has Murdo got back to you on pints, Dave?
Not yet. No.
That's
He says
disappointing.
Murdo.
we're top spot in the conference. Too close to call. Who would Leinster rather see come top? Assuming both Glasgow and Munster reach the semis, and with you guys playing whoever comes second. How important will the game? This is the part that I think is interesting. How important will the game between the Weege and Leinster on the 13th of April be to deciding who wins the group? It'll be interesting to see what attitude we take to that match because it's. I mean, it's an out of conference game, so we don't care. Even if it was an in conference game, we don't care.
We can afford to decide who
But we can
be
decide,
kingmakers.
Yeah, there's an element to that
But
too.
do they want to play Munster in a semi-final? Like, let's say, you know, Munster comes second. Do they want that?
Do you want to play Munster in a final or a semi-final? Would you rather play them at home or on a neutral venue?
I think I'd rather have them in a semi-final again, thanks.
Yeah, at home. You know, see, there's that kind of tactical appreciation to it. So big picture stuff has to go into it. That would be my thinking.
And Munster have their hardest game is Treviso away.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that that's an easy game by any stretch of the imagination these days, but they've got Connacht at home. They've got Cardiff at home. I can't remember who the other one is. It might be Edinburgh. Well, anyway, it's it's actually one of the Italians. The other one of the Italians. No, never mind. But they've got 3 relatively easy games, whereas Glasgow have got to travel to us, and they've got to travel to the. Wish I could remember this. I looked at it all earlier, but they've got 2 hard away games, whereas Munster don't. They've got just Treviso. So I think that Glasgow will have to win all their games pretty much because Munster probably will do.
I think both teams are as likely to win the same amount of games as the other. No, but I mean that. I mean, they are very, very closely matched. And they have been all season. I mean, the lead. I think that lead is going to change hands a couple of times. There's going to be a couple of slips twixt mouth and cup and lip.
They've got a couple of nice. Both of them have a nice couple of home fixtures next weekend. Glasgow take on the Cheetahs, and Munster take on Zebra. So you got to think both of them will more likely get bonus point home victories there.
That's who the other one is.
Yeah.
One thing that we didn't really discuss was the rumours that have been abounding of Jack McGrath's.
Yeah.
Well, we have a question here from Mick Thompson, which might be a nice way to lead into this. If McGrath goes to Ulster, do we rely on Dooley and Byrne, or are we recruiting? Are there any IQ players in top 2 tiers in England or France that we could call upon?
Well,
so we'll deal with the question of his leaving first of all.
Well, just in relation. Sorry, go on. Okay, go on.
No, go on.
Well, I was just going to say I'm going to actually tackle this the signings. Mick Dawson was interviewed during the week, and he mentioned that there's going to be no imports coming in.
Mm-hmm. That'll be right, yeah.
I can well see that. Remember, things are going to be tight in Irish rugby next year. No autumn internationals, and only 2 home games in the Six Nations.
Mm-hmm.
That
was this season.
Yeah, so next season with the money from this. So it's a bit of a year where we have to be careful with what we do because this year is just it's an unideal storm, if you like. So I can see that there will be certain spending restrictions for unnecessary signings over the next 12 months.
Yeah, so I just thought it was interesting that like we've kind of already ruled out no.
Yeah, well, I would think anyway that Peter Dooley, if Jack McGrath is going and it hasn't been confirmed, looks likely but it hasn't been confirmed, Peter Dooley and Brian Ed Byrne are backing up
It's very difficult. Like, you have to look at it from McGrath's point of view. He's lost his place in the Irish 23.
Mm-hmm.
For the last European Cup match, he lost his place in Leinster 23.
Yeah.
He's an ambitious man. He's played for the Lions. He's got, I don't know, many caps for Ireland.
Would you rather compete with Cian Healy for your place every week with Cian Healy and the two lads, or with Eric?
We can only see a tiny bit of the iceberg that's sticking out of the water of what happens on the 80 minutes on the pitch. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes,
or in training,
or his relationship with Cullen or with Lancaster, or any of that. We know nothing about that. And when you see a guy like Jack McGrath and see how quickly his stars started to fade, maybe he needs something else.
New challenge.
There was a time in Irish rugby where if you were in the Irish 15, certainly in 23 probably, you were given a certain amount of time if you were out of form or out of fitness to play your way back in. Now, particularly in the front row, which is a totally new experience for Irish rugby, there's so much competition for places. Even at international level or provincial level, if you're not ready to go on a Saturday, there's somebody else who's going to be ready to take your jersey.
Yeah. And
I think Jack McGrath's found himself in a situation where, he's had a couple of injuries. Cian Healy has come back. He's in really, really good form. He's hit the ground running. He's not letting go of that jersey. On top of that, there's guys behind him who've taken the opportunities that have been given in the autumn internationals and at this point in time, like Ed Byrne, like Peter Dooley, to kind of push really hard for that bench spot. So he's kind of thinking, well, if I want to get back into the Irish team, which I'm sure is ultimately his goal, am I going to do it at Leinster? Because I'm not going to get enough pitch time.
It's all down to the pitch time. Yeah,
he's not young enough to outweight Cian Healy through natural wastage.
Yeah,
he's only 2 years younger, I think.
Exactly. So. Yeah. So he doesn't have that. He's not like somebody like Ed Byrne who can wait for Cian Healy to go. He has to, make a decision, and Ulster would seem to be. The only thing is that I feel a bit sorry in a way for Eric O'Sullivan, who's going great guns up in Ulster. He was superb. He was absolutely superb.
But they need another one.
As we know, you can't win a European Cup or even a league
with
just one prop.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like in our pomp, if you call it that, the early turn of the decade, we had Van der Meer and Cian Healy coming in and alternating. Play 60 on the bench for 20, then vice versa.
Last year we had the two boys.
Exactly, yeah. And it seemed to work they seem to work it nicely in tandem. I don't know what's happened now, but I think if he needs to go for his own career, and that's unfortunate.
What do you think?
We can't stockpile. We can't have. You got to give Dooley a chance. You got to give Byrne.
You see, that's the thing. I mean, you have to look at it with two different hats on, if you like. Jack McGrath's been a great servant to Leinster. He's still quite a young player, but even in that period of time that he's been superb for us, really, really brilliant. And if he needs this to go to the next level in his career, then thanks, Jack, and I hope you have a good time. The other side of that is I don't want any player to leave. I want all the players.
I know that, but
with my other hat on, I want all the players.
But not, in an ideal world that'd be great, but they're not going to stay the second season. They're going to get itchy feet and go, well.
First Lion to move provinces since Eric Miller. Would he be?
He could
thinking
be.
That today.
Could be. At the end of the day, if you're a professional rugby player, you kind of have to play. That's kind of it's there in the name.
That's what you're paid for. Right?
That's what you're paid for. So if he goes, I'll be disappointed to see him go. But I'll be grateful for what he's left behind.
But it does open up. We obviously are disappointed to be losing a great player like him, and he gave 6-7 seasons of really great top-notch performances for both Leinster and Ireland. But it must be difficult for Ulster fans to see another import coming in.
That'd be 10 Leinster players.
It is kind of diluting the whole provincial rivalry a little bit, isn't it?
Well, I suppose the RFU's thinking on it is, yeah, will do in the short term. The long term plan is obviously to have the Ulster Academy up and producing, and same with Munster, same whatever. So that it's a short term fix. That's what they're saying. And while we have these guys there, because they're not doing anything else because they can't all play in Leinster.
Yeah.
We may as well use them while we get other stuff going.
Well, I suppose it's better to see 10 Irish guys playing.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah.
Rather than 6 as it was not so long ago when
South
they got to the
Africans,
final.
yeah.
South Africans coming in.
Yeah. And in fairness, Jordy Murphy made his decision to go. Jack McGrath looks like he's making his decision to go in the same way as Robbie Henshaw made his decision to go the other way and come towards Leinster rather than away.
Come back to Leinster.
Yeah, well, let's not open that can of worms.
Can of worms. It's called geography, John.
It's total can of worms. But anyway,
But like, there's
Played
loads
Gaelic
of
football for Westmeath in the Leinster Championship.
but there's
Sorry,
no,
carry on.
but there's loads of other alternatives, or there's loads of other reasons for people to make decisions. Like, say, Henshaw, I think his girlfriend moved to Dublin. So do you know what I mean? Like, there's lots of personal things that get involved, not just your rugby career as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, sometimes we forget that these are people with lives.
well,
You know-
my point was going to be that, like, of the 10 players they have, or the 9 players they currently have up there, only Jordy Murphy, you know, he's the only high-profile player that came directly from Leicester. Marty Moore came in from
Yeah.
Wasps.
Cooney
The
from
rest of them,
Connacht.
Cooney came in from Connacht. The rest of them all went to the academy in Ulster. You know, okay, they're Leinster developed players. Some of them were in the, like Alan O'Connor was in the sub academy. Quite a few of the other guys were in the sub academy, but they went into year 1 academy in Ulster.
Yeah.
So to some degree,
The
They-
products of the Ulster system.
they are products of the Ulster Academy. You know, if they are they are also products of the Leinster school system.
By the way, that's just. Did you see? You didn't see the Ulster game? No, you didn't.
No, I didn't.
I was watching it. I was watching it on the thing, and I have to say, for a guy who's had a great season, John Cooney had one of the worst games I've ever seen a professional rugby player have.
Did
Yeah, it was just. It's one that, you know, one of those games. Okay, the ball's dropping from the line out. I have to catch it. Oh shit, I've knocked it on. Or ball's at the base of the ruck. I have to pick it up. Oh shit, I've knocked it on. You know, he just had one. You know, one of those days when everything you do
Goes
goes
wrong.
wrong, no matter what you do. And every player has them once or twice in their career.
Well-
He had his last Sunday.
Well, the Dragons must have been fairly brutal.
Oh, they were dreadful. They were
If-
dreadful.
If he can have a crap game,
Oh.
he scores a try,
Yeah,
and they get a bonus point win.
and didn't fall over, drop the ball, or run the wrong direction, because the game he was having, that would have been an option. But the Dragons weren't brutal, John, or Jason. The Dragons, with the exception of one or two of their younger players that they drafted in, who were actually quite, up for it, the Dragons were brutal.
John, you actually said you sent me a text there during the week of all 4 try scorers were ex-Leinster,
Yeah,
to some
in
degree or other.
In fact, Billy Burns scored 2 points from a conversion when he came on to replace Cooney. Or no, he didn't replace, but when he came on and he replaced him as a kicker.
Yeah, when Shannon came on for Cooney.
That's the one. Thanks, I got there in the end. So that's the only 2 points that somebody
English
who
man scored.
that somebody who wasn't developed in Leinster scored. Like Alan O'Connor, Leinster Sub Academy, Jordy Murphy, we all know. Marty Moore, we all know. And Cooney.
These things are cyclical.
Of course, hopefully Ulster Ulster were slamming out for backs to beat the band. Centres, I know they lost 2 of them in bad circumstances, but they've been, producing guys. Unfortunately, didn't produce forward, so maybe they'll start doing that
There
again.
is some forwards. I mean, Mr. Henderson isn't so bad.
Henderson is, Henderson and Best are
Yeah.
their main, and Best has been developed quite a while
They lost
now.
that guy who was a Pollock.
Yeah, but again,
They lost
that's
him.
10 years ago.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Because
Way
I
back.
remember when we went to see that under 20s match in
Yeah.
the Aviva, most of the best players were Ulster players. If you remember that day.
That's close
Yeah.
to 9 years ago now.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
You know?
And the thing is, okay, there's a couple of guys coming through. There's guys like Hume and Balakoon's going well. Stockdale's obviously come through.
Oh, sorry, yeah. How could we forget him?
Yeah. So they have guys coming through at the moment, but there was a gap.
Yeah.
So there was a sizable gap.
He's not a forward, that's how.
No, yeah, I suppose, yeah.
Well, because we've obviously got a lot of other things to cover, just quickly run through the other results. So Connacht hockeyed the Ospreys 46.
Yes.
5.
And a beautiful sunny day in Galway. I was watching it on the telly.
I watched it for the first half an hour, and then all of a sudden my Premier Sports, which was being picked up on Air Sport, kicked out, and so I don't know, they stopped showing it.
All right.
So, anyway, so I got to see the first 20 or 30 minutes. But that was the Ospreys' 6th consecutive defeat.
Well, they can't get the Scarlets into them quick enough, I'd say.
So that dates back to the 5th of January was their last victory.
Yeah.
That's pretty bad. Well, maybe it's they're kind of demoralised because they know what's happening.
Yeah.
You know what's
Say
coming down.
100%.
What's coming down the tracks for them.
It must be very difficult. I mean, that's someone's livelihood and jobs, you know, like it's...
Yeah, it's not easy.
People have mortgages and all the rest of it. It is obviously, and it's that you've got that weighing over your head whether you're going to get the chop or the club is going to exist next season. It must be
Maybe they'll do like the Italians did when they chopped the Aroni. Just sent all their players to Zebra. They didn't even have to change the colour of their jerseys.
Just move the city.
Yeah.
Like the Rams.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, this one is, I mean, Treviso doing great guns, isn't it? 18-10 against
9 on the bounce.
Yeah.
9 games on the bounce.
Is
I think so. Or is it 9 out of 11? It's some huge...
They've won 10 games in the league anyway this season.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, they're going well. They're going very, very well. They're doing what we hoped they would do.
Yeah. No, but that's, like, I was kind of slagging off the league earlier, but I didn't mean as such to slag it off, but I want to see more of the Trevisos coming through, rather than there's always Munster up near the top, there's always Leinster up near the top, Glasgow's always there, Scarlets occasionally come and go, Ospreys used to be there, but now it's great to see the Trevisos coming through. Like last season we had the Cheetahs, but they haven't really done much this season.
It'll be interesting to see what happens next year actually with the Cheetahs because of the World Cup. Currie Cup's been played earlier.
Yeah.
The Pro 14's been played later.
They'll be unhindered.
Which means that the Cheetahs won't have to play 2 competitions simultaneously. The advantage of that is that they can reduce their squad size and spend their budget on higher quality players.
Yeah.
So that'll be an interesting one to look at next year.
Wasn't it amazing there last season that they had 2 squads for each competition?
Yeah, I mean, we are critical. We have been critical of South Africa, but there's not too many teams in the Northern Hemisphere could play in 2 elite level domestic leagues at the same time. There's very, very few. We'd struggle to do that now, if you think about it.
Well, I suppose they don't play in the European Cup, so
no, they don't. They have that, but I mean to play in the Pro 14 twice.
Yeah,
if you know what I mean.
And they're also not involved in the Six Nations. Their competition goes on in our off season, so so it is just the Currie Cup. Meanwhile, back at Treviso, though, they've got a hard run in, so the Scarlets don't. Crucially, like the Treviso have to play us away.
Yeah.
They've got to play Connacht away next week. They've Munster, okay, it's at home, and then they'll probably mop up Zebre in Zebre.
You wouldn't know because that's a local derby.
Well, that's true as well.
And you also wouldn't know what kind of team or interest level we'd put out. You know.
Could we be beaten twice by Treviso?
Twice in a row? I don't think we'd fancy that.
We probably wouldn't fancy it, but I mean, you know, at the end of the day, you're going to kill yourself for nothing.
We'll see.
It's going to be hard. It's actually going to be interesting to see how Leo and Stuart handle this.
Yeah.
Because it's an interesting psychological conundrum.
Well, on the other hand, Scarlets, they do have Cardiff away, which is a local derby and could go anyway. But they then have Edinburgh at home, Zebre at home, and Dragons. So, like, that's a pretty handy run in. Edinburgh seem to be distracted by their Euro. You've been saying that, distracted by the European run. So they've got. I think they've got us the week before Europe, and they're away in the Scarlets the week after Europe. So that's going to be a bit of a. That's 3 weeks of
go back to Edinburgh,
hard rugby.
Because they've been playing so well for the last 9 months. They've had more players called up to Scotland than maybe they would have the previous. So.
Yeah. So, Edinburgh, their first game back is against us after the Six Nations. Then they've a quarter final against Munster, and then the Scarlets the following week. And the Scarlets have the week off and they're at home.
Yeah, so. Edinburgh have lost 3 of their last 4 games.
Yeah, they seem to be imploding a little bit. All right.
Well, I just think that they're putting their eggs into the European basket. But one result, which was a bit of a turn-up for the books, was Scarlets beating Munster 10-6.
Nice playing words there.
It was, yes, I was intentional.
That was a game. Did you see it?
No.
The scoreline would say it wasn't a thriller.
It wasn't. I don't know if it was a thriller, but it was a great game of rugby to watch.
Was
the
it?
intensity was a massive. Munster spent most of the time absolutely hammering at Scarlet's 5 metre line, and Scarlet spent most of the time stopping them. It was really, really good. I mean, it was a kind of a you don't traditionally associate that kind of play with Scarlets, so you don't. But they were superb. They were really, really good. Super disciplined. Really, really disciplined. And took their opportunities when they came. Munster just weren't able to get that, half second of breathing space. Scarlets didn't let them have it. That they would have needed to get over.
Did they have a Justin Harrison level of white line fever?
Munster? Kinda, yeah, they did a bit. No, actually, no, they weren't all that ill-disciplined. I mean, I much as I'd love to laugh at Munster, you have to give kudos to Scarlets. Their discipline was just, and their defence was absolutely heroic. It really, really was.
Okay, and just the final other results was Cardiff beat the Kings. No great surprise there.
No.
We spoke about Dragons losing to Ulster. So I suppose just very briefly turning our attention to next week, we obviously take on Edinburgh, who are 50.
So that's 3 weeks away.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that.
It's
we
two weeks of internationals first.
Some of our loyal and devoted viewers' questions. Andrew Potts asked, have Leinster and Ireland peaked last season? And then he asked, why is Connacht developing more young players than Munster? Just take the second part first. Connacht have actually always had a really, really good school system. They kind of had to. They put a really good school system in place about maybe 10 years ago. So they do have a lot of players coming through. They've also got, there are some people out there who think parts of Leinster are in Connacht. So they get to pick from that as well. But they've always been really good at identifying talent.
I think that they've done a very good job in kind of trawling through the AIL.
Yeah, they have.
And seeing players that Leinster kind of had a look at and then kind of discarded. And the kids have gone back into the AIL and then it's almost a bit like Moneyball. It's, they've just cherry-picked guys that aren't going to cost them an arm and a leg and just giving them an opportunity. They're very hungry to get their opportunity in pro rugby, and most of them have kind of grabbed it.
Oh, yeah,
Several of our wingers, in fact, one of them on his way back this season, but the other two still there.
Yeah, I mean, they did put an awful lot of effort into schools rugby about 10 years ago, maybe a bit more, because they don't have the population, so they had to really, really.
No, the rugby clubs. Yeah. I mean, they're really bashing above their weight.
They had to squeeze every last drop out of every orange that they had, as it were, and they've done it well. That's why I think Munster were a bit too confident that their club system was always going to keep producing players the way it did, and they didn't really put enough effort into maintenance.
And once the recession hit in Munster, people either left the country or left to move to Dublin.
Yeah,
and the club scene really struggled.
You can see that in the AIL. Munster clubs which had previously been dominant became, a lot of them had a hard couple of years now. A lot of them have come back again, but they had a hard couple of years. Munster clubs in the AIL.
But even you see some ex-Munster players who are playing for Lansdowne and Clontarf.
Yeah.
Whereas traditionally they would have gone back to Corkon or Garryowen or whoever, but they're actually their day is done as a pro rugby player, and they're just playing on an amateur club side now.
Yeah.
But they're playing in Dublin rather than down in Cork and Limerick.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. And the other question Andrew asks is about did Ireland and Leinster peak last year?
We hope not.
Hope not. It's hard to know with Ireland, you see, because we're in this, like we were saying last week about, this is kind of pre-season for Ireland, because obviously the team has to peak in September, October. Not now. I mean, the Six Nations. We discussed whether what in terms of the importance of it, but the realpolitik of how Ireland are running it is that the most important thing happens in the autumn, not now. So
it was also the most successful season of any time in Irish rugby's history.
Oh yeah, so it's always going to be a peak.
And in Leinster rugby's history.
And Leinster. Yeah. So you're either going to replicate it, or you lose one of those tournaments down. And it's people will be questioning you.
Yeah.
But like if you look at Leinster's performance, they've got a home quarter final
already.
They've got a home in Europe. Home quarter final in Europe, where they've won their group.
Mm-hmm.
They've got a home semi-final where they've won their conference with 4 games surplus, and the Irish team, they've beaten the All Blacks this season. They've won 2 of their 3 Six Nations games. They went through the autumn series undefeated. Like, it's not too bad. Okay, we had a hiccup, a very big hiccup, but we hit. You know, it was only
one
game
match
against England, and we underperformed for sure.
Yeah.
But like, if we'd have got England as the 5th game rather than the first game, who knows what would have happened?
Antes and balls and all
true,
of that.
that's true.
Hugh Maher asks, Maloney has really stepped up this season, improving game on game. Possible international?
There's such a logjam at
Yeah.
second row. I
Yeah.
don't know how he's going to get past it all.
I'd say this World Cup cycle,
Definitely not.
definitely not. Next World Cup cycle,
Who knows?
he's in prime position for it.
Yeah,
You know,
who knows?
he's doing well at Leinster. He's a very good player. He really is.
He's a great player, but the
He's come on a huge amount as well. You can see him getting better and better.
but the 4 boys that we all have as our World Cup picks, Baron Henderson, Ryan and Toner, behind them you've got Rue and Delan, and you know, then you're talking about the Ross Maloneys of the world. Can you get past Rue and Delan? Possibly, but still, does that make him an Irish international?
Possibly not.
Possibly not. So it's
James Murphy asks, what do you think of Doris continually playing 8 instead of Max Deegan, especially when Deegan seems to be playing much better? Well, the first thing to say is Doris isn't continually playing number 8. He's continually been selected at number 8 by Leo Cullen and Stuart Lancaster. You see these guys.
He's got an 8 on his back,
week in, week out, and I think that's quite true. Actually, I think that's a when we're it's not going to be it's not going to affect us during the Six Nations, but we have a fairly unbalanced back row now. Deegan's a fantastic footballer, but he ain't a 7.
No, but
he's
again,
a fantastic footballer.
We did that a few seasons ago as well, playing kind of 3, Robo-Cups, I think I was calling them at the time. 3 guys who were pretty similar in skill set and pretty similar in size and pretty similar in, and we're kind of back at that again. We had Ruddock, Doris and Deegan there. Deegan had a belter of a game,
brilliant.
Belter of a tackle. But he seems to be the one that's put, maybe they're just giving him the. Maybe they're giving him the hard, moving him about, trying to unsettle him and see how he reacts.
7 is also more of a footballing position.
Mm.
And James Deegan, or not James Deegan, I've decided to combine a number of players. Max Deegan is by far the best footballer. So they're thinking, right, we'll put him at 7. His skill set is closer to that, what you want in that position. Because he's a wonderful footballer. He really, really is.
Maybe he's just seen as having that bit more experience than... Because he has a lot more caps.
Or maybe they think, because I know it's been a problem that they've had
year.
with him in the past, is his concentration level, that Doris is more orthodox at the back of a scrum, and that's what they want.
Who knows?
Who
knows? But yeah, I think maybe they're just playing Doris in his natural position because he hasn't as much experience. And if they have to move somebody, they're moving Deegan for now. That could change next season. Yeah, could be him.
We don't know. They could be playing. I still think there's an element that they feel Doris is the better number 8 at this point in time. Maybe not the better footballer, but the better number 8.
Yeah, it's hard to know.
It's a real changing of the guards, isn't it? In the back row, you've got, in the last few seasons, obviously O'Brien's going over to London now. He's retired.
Geordie's gone.
O'Loughlin, retired about 3 seasons ago. Really, kind of, there's a whole new generation of kids coming through, but it's very hard to know what the new. And obviously, you've got Levy and Van der Fleer there, but it's very hard to know if there's what way it's going to pan out in the next couple of seasons.
Well, the retirements haven't made the selection headaches any easier, or the retirements and departures haven't made the selection headaches any easier for the coaches, which is a good thing. I mean, Heaslip is gone, like we say, Kevin McLaughlin's gone, Sean O'Brien's going, Jordy Murphy's gone, and then you've still got a situation where you've got all these great guys to pick from. You've got Ruddock, Doris, Deegan, Conan, Van der Fleer, Levy, Penny, Will Connor. There's a lot of good guys there. Josh Murphy does a nod. Whenever he's picked, he puts in a hell of a shift at number 6. Really, really does.
I'd say we're going to have to be realistic, and some of those guys are going to go.
Some of those guys
at some stage,
yeah.
Right.
Any more questions there, Dave?
We have one more question. It was actually somebody who obviously tweeted on the way home from the game. Says, important questions from tonight. Who won Cheetah's longest shit kick competition?
I think you touched on that one.
I think we touched on that one. Does Andrew Porter always wear odd boots?
Don't know.
Does anyone notice that?
No.
I haven't noticed that. Some players do that because I mean your feet are actually different sizes, so you wear the best. So if you're in a position where some top sportswear company is supplying you with boots for free, then wear whatever boots you want, kind of thing.
Suppose.
A lot of footballers do that. Why did so many people sit in the rain to watch that match to the end? That's a really good question. I couldn't answer because I was warm and dry on the terrace. But I'd say the reason why they stayed to watch it to the end is because they're good, die-hard Leinster supporters, and fair play to them.
Yeah.
Fair play to anyone in the north and south stand.
I saw a couple of, actually, that one of those chaps who asked us a question, Mick Thompson, I saw a great photograph of him in the south stand, drowned.
Was he drowned?
He was drowned. He was like a drowned rat.
Fair play to them. Fair play.
Yeah. Well, moving our attention towards the match in the Aviva Stadium next Sunday. Sorry, excuse me. Interesting to see what team is going to be selected.
Isn't it?
Like, there's lots of rumours that there's going to be 5 or 6 changes to.
For once, it's a case of which Irish team will turn up
We'll
to play the French.
We'll wait and see what Jerry says. I'd say he'll go with the strongest team he has available to him. I mean, if only wartime is over, kind of thing.
Absolutely, there's only 2 games left.
There's only 2 games left. I'd say whoever's fit, you look at whoever's fit and then pick the strongest team from that.
Yeah, and Murray and Sexton need a bit of gelling time, so I can't see anybody getting.
Especially with Carberry.
Carberry's injured. Yeah,
a bit crook, as they say.
I saw Schmidtman interviewed, and he was kind of giving Joey as much time as possible. He was saying, well, if he's even fit on Friday,
we'll
we
select
might
him.
select him.
I don't think there's any
Not select
chance
him,
of that.
but on the bench.
Oh yeah, well that might. But I don't think there's any chance. No, I think it'll be a pretty orthodox team selection depending on who's fit. Ringrose is supposed to be back in contention, isn't he?
Yeah.
Is Henshaw back in contention?
Yeah.
So you could have those guys restored.
Just goes to show the difference that Ringrose makes to that team is phenomenal.
Ringrose makes a big difference.
Yeah,
Well, hopefully it will be.
Defence. This is going to be. We've played our last 5 meetings with France. We've won 4 of them.
Did you ever think you'd see the day, Jay?
I didn't, and then there's 2 previous to those 5 games was 2 draws.
Yeah.
So like France have beaten us once in the last 7 outings, just quite
Tell
unusual.
somebody that 10 years ago,
Yeah.
and they won't believe you.
No.
But France have been a complete shambles. This Six Nations, that's no guarantee that they're going to be a shambles next Sunday. Sadly.
France been a shambles in the first half of matches. No guarantee they'll be a shambles in the second half.
Exactly.
Well, they seem to be better
the other way
in the first
around
half
generally,
than the second.
Well, they have generally, but you never know with France. I mean, it's loath though I am to succumb to national stereotypes.
Cheesy.
It's
Surrender monkey.
No, not that one. That's a Simpson stereotype.
You've got to be wearing a beret
it's
and
very, very
some
hard.
onions.
It's very, very hard to not do that with French rugby, because we've seen them over the last 10 years since the glory days kind of ended. Mix from insanity to genius, often in the space of 10 minutes. So, what French team will show up on Saturday? That's not the question.
He said it. You weren't
That's not the
supposed to say
question.
that.
That's not the question. The question is what French team will show up for the first 10 minutes, for the next 10 minutes. You never know. You don't know with France.
Yeah, and it seemed to be fairly disillusioned. We're nearly back to Livramont situation where, the stuff happening, like guys coming on not knowing who's captain, playing centres on the wings, playing
not knowing what position
you're coming on in.
When you saw like them analysing the match in Twickenham, and there was no full back. Like it's no wonder England kicked the ball so much when there's no one back there defending your massive amounts of green space.
I'm just telling Robbie Henshaw you said that.
Okay. So it's going to be, but like, there's obviously a couple of other games as well this weekend.
Yeah, it's actually very hard to analyse that because it's a bit early in the week. We don't know who's going to be available for Ireland, and God only knows who the French will pick. And all I can say is that I'm pretty sure that Ireland will win.
I think I read somewhere that we've selected 34 players in our opening 3 games.
Well,
when we won the Grand Slam in
we didn't.
09, there was only 19 players used.
How many players were used last year though?
I'm not sure, but obviously like say certainly for the Italy match, they needed to go in. I know there was injuries, but I think there was also they were taking
Bit of
opportunities to
experimental.
look at
Yeah.
different people in different positions and.
Well, don't forget in 09, we were depending on our best players to stay fit
Yeah.
to win a
Yeah.
to win a Grand Slam. Whereas in 18, we weren't really. We had the depth
and it goes back to what Dave was saying. Like, sure, the Six Nations is very important, and like it's not that they're deciding to write it off, but they're also, you know,
Keeping
they do
an eye.
have a bigger picture that they're looking down the track, and they want to see if we're playing South Africa and if such and such a guy gets injured, can someone come in and fill a void?
Yeah. No, I would agree with that entirely. Yeah.
So England have Italy visiting them in Twickenham, I believe.
I wonder if Italy will compete in the rucks.
That's Italy didn't win that match with the Rooks, really.
No,
They came
but
close.
England lost a lot of
Credibility,
credibility.
yeah. England are the only side that
Yeah.
hasn't been beaten by Italy still.
And I think
Don't think it's
going
gonna happen in this weekend.
But Conor O'Shea will come up with something. He's a clever coach. And Italy seem to be going in the right direction. I mean, the clubs are going well, the under-20s are going well, the women are going well. The game in Italy seems to be moving in the right direction. Finally, everybody seems to be marching in the same tune.
But you need idiots that are starting to call for Italy to be kicked out of the Six Nations to shut up. Because
they're not people who watch rugby, Jay.
But they're just, Italy now, like, they were getting beaten by 40, 50 points not so long ago. Now, we only beat them,
By 10.
Wales only beat them by 9.
Yeah.
Or we beat them by 9, Wales beat them by 10. Or
I remember having a conversation with the host of a major Irish sports radio program on Twitter, and he was saying that Italy should be got rid of, blah, 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 all this kind of stuff. And I was saying, look at where we were in the 80s or in the 90s. We went a whole decade without winning pretty much anything. And he said, oh yeah, well, you look at Italy, they're getting hockeyed by 40 and 50 points. Ireland were never getting hockeyed by 40 and 50 points. They weren't, but the game was different. Ireland
They didn't have 40
Ireland were
and
getting
50
beaten by
points back
Italy. They
then.
beat us 3 times on the
that's
bounce.
right.
Losing back then, you could lie all over the ball, you could collapse mods, you could do this, you could do that, you could play negatively. Now you can't. You're not allowed to play negatively, which means that if you're up against a better team, you're going to get beaten. Whereas back then there were things you could do.
I remember England putting 50 points on us. I remember.
Yeah, well, yeah, it happened. Yeah, it did. It
I
certainly did
remember
happen.
the All Blacks putting
But
50 points on us.
a result from the late 80s, early 90s, where the result was, we'll say, 25-10, or 25.
Don't forget, tries were worth 4
Yeah,
points at the time.
20,
as
so
well.
yeah, you're right. 25-6 or 25-9. That's pretty much the equivalent of a 50-point beat nowadays.
Yeah.
Because it means that they've scored 6 tries on you. You know, there or thereabouts. So it's a different. I mean, but people don't realise that. They don't understand that because they don't understand the game. So they haven't. So they can. Oh, Italy are rubbish. They must be got rid of. And then you say, well, who do you bring in? Oh, Georgia, because they've heard this somewhere. They've read it somewhere. And you look at Georgia, and we saw the thing in Europe this year where the 2 best non-tier 1 clubs in Europe in 2 matches conceded a combined 200 odd points. That's the level below Italy. You know, Georgia can't beat the Italian A team. That's the level you're at. For all the criticism we give Italy, and we do give them a certain amount of criticism. I mean, as Bill Hicks would say, after Italy, there's a real fucking drop off.
Well, the other interesting game is: are Wales going to have their Grand Slam stopped in Murrayfield, or are we going to have a go?
When was the last time Wales lost to Scotland?
I have absolutely no idea.
No, I was just wondering. I don't know.
It's a good few years ago.
Yeah, I think
remember.
so. I think Scotland have had the Indian sign on Wales for quite a while now.
Well,
Or Wales,
the other way around, yeah. Well, we'll see. It's in Murrayfield, and Scotland, while they can't win an away game, they can certainly win in Murrayfield. They gave the All Blacks a good go in Murrayfield. Okay, they didn't beat them, but they weren't far away. So they need a good win on the board, and Wales might get a little bit rattly. They're getting close to a Grand Slam. They might start get a bit nervous. Not like the
You might
Welsh
see a
generally.
few players a bit pissed off. If they're
Especially with what's
if
going
their
on.
mates have lost their contracts, if
Yeah.
they're playing in the Ospreys, they're getting merged. There's obviously 2 teams into one. There's going to be a lot of redundancies. Ultimately, it's the WRU who control the Welsh team and control the provincial sides. You might see a little bit of derision in the camp.
You might. I can't see Alan Wynne being too happy about it.
I mean, we saw, for instance, how
Isn't that the whole point, though, Jason? That the WRU don't control the regional size.
But they're the ones making the merger, right?
That's yeah, but like
So it's their decision. Their
they're
decision.
they're trying to get control of them is rather than they
but
have
my
control.
point is though that it's the WRU that are making that decision to merge the two teams,
Presumably, yeah.
and it's the WRU who the players are going to be representing when they go out against
true.
Scotland and Murrayfield. I mean, you saw, for instance, when Declan Kidney left Leinster to go back to Munster 15 odd years ago, that a lot of the Leinster players were really peeved off with him because he made a decision on whether fellas were going to get their contracts renewed.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a lot of loyalty. There's fellas that you know, they're not like they're, you know, Premiership footballers on 10 million a year. These guys, they're in the top probably 5% of Irish earners, certainly the internationals are, but they're not making gazillions. So if someone loses their contract playing rugby, do you know, they're on the dole. What do you do when you're 27 years of age and you know you've given your heart into playing pro rugby? You're going back to where your peers are, but you're going back to 21-year-olds starting at the, you know, entry level jobs.
And you know, you're talking about guys certainly in Wales, who'd live in areas that would be economically depressed and wouldn't find it that easy to find, or mightn't find it that easy to find alternative employment. You know, it's a different thing. Yeah. It's a different thing with Jimmy Norton losing his contract or Ross McCarron and going to work in their family business than it is for some guy from Newport.
Yeah, or like say Alan Wynne Jones is,
not to diminish what happened to those guys, but you know what I mean.
But like Alan Wynne Jones is a 100 cap Welsh international who's played on 3 Lions tours. Do you know what I mean? I'm sure he's got enough money in the bank to set his own business up, or if he wants to go and work for a company, I'm sure doors will be only being flung open to get him in there when he retires.
Of course.
But you're going to get fellas that are just average pro club players, no Welsh caps, and all of a sudden their gig is over at 27 and they're pretty much starting from the bottom of the, you know, with all their peers that they were in school with or college with have got 7, 8, 9
so
years
are you saying
experience.
that's going to make them beat Scotland, or it's going to make them
I'm
lose
just
to
saying
Scotland?
that it's a factor that could possibly be there as well.
Okay.
I'd agree.
Anyway, like I suppose we're kind of pushed for time, but just one thing I do want to talk about is this World Rugby League that's been proposed. Well, I mean, it's snorted a day, but it's getting traction.
What else can you do?
Like the World Rugby have you know, proposed it. There's been, you know, Johnny Sexton and all the lads have come out and
against
it. No, sure, for sure. You know, even people like Pat Lam have criticised it because of not giving the
Pacific
Islands a fair go. We mentioned Georgia as well, not being allowed to. They've ring fenced it, so you have the 4 teams from the Southern Hemisphere, the 6 nations, and Japan.
And the 2 teams
States.
with money.
The 2 teams with money.
Yeah, well, it's fairly transparent. You know, get the teams with the most money and put them together, and
screw the rest.
And screw the rest. Well, what they're saying is that, I don't know, we'll use the money that we get from all that to develop the Pacific Island. Well, how the hell are you going to develop them if they're not playing any bloody games?
It's great to develop them to come and play for us.
Come and play for, yeah, exactly.
I mean, Pichot kind of saying though that
Pichot talks out of both sides.
Okay, sure, but he was kind of trying to say we're going to have 2 12-team leagues and it'll be promotion and relegation.
He said scrambling desperately. He said it was gaining traction, but it's an idea that World Rugby have come out with. It's been opposed by the players, all the international coaches, most of the fans, and any of the non-tier 1 unions. So it hasn't actually so much got some traction as attracted a huge amount of opposition.
Yeah, and also it's the player welfare aspect of it, playing 5 games in the autumn. Like if you're getting into a semi-final and a final, you're playing 5. Like the All Blacks are pretty much expected to get in 5 games at the high level at the end of a season. That's the end of their season.
Do you think it's been driven by the Southern Hemisphere insofar as New Zealand produce these wonderful players, but they can't hold on to them because they don't have the cash in their economy to compete with the big clubs in France and England?
I think one of the main drivers has been a member of the board of directors of USA Rugby, Augustin Pichot. No rats to be smelt there. I think that the problem is, just to add on to what you were saying about player welfare and all the various negatives, the other thing is the one thing Pichot has done is this 5-year qualification period.
Mm.
This renders that a complete waste of time anyway, because beforehand it was like, 5 years is half of my career. If I want to switch country or move country, then I'm going to have to set aside. That's a lot. But now if you're looking at it, if you're, a young Bundy Aki or whatever, and you're looking, well, I'm not going to play top level international rugby during my entire career. What's 5 years of a wait?
Yeah, that's a good point.
It swings the barometer back towards the richer Northern Hemisphere unions qualifying players from the islands.
That's true. Yeah. That's not one
Is
I had
Bundy not New
considered.
Zealander?
Well, I'm just
Yes,
saying as
yeah.
an example. I'm just
Okay.
taking as an example. Or New Zealanders or whatever. If you're somebody who's not going to play top level international rugby during your career anyway, then what's a 5-year wait?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, I think though that it was interesting to see the views of the three players, Kieran Reid, Johnny Sexton and Owen Farrell, each of them coming at it from their own specific angle. Like obviously
Friedler sticking
Well,
up
they
for the
did-
clubs.
They did. They did
exactly,
have,
Farrell coming
they-
back from the club.
they did have a conference call.
Yeah, and Johnny Sexton from, that's obviously a big talking point in Irish rugby is player welfare and management, and Kieran Reid's talking about New Zealanders holding on to New Zealand players
Yeah.
to stay in New Zealand. It's funny how they've all got their own angles and their own patch to bat for.
Here's another thing, and it's something you regularly mention, Jay, is after, when the Six Nations is over, you say, well, 1.2 million people sat down and watched Ireland versus England last year, we'll say, right? Part of this competition is the TV rights get sold behind a paywall. So there won't be 1.2 million people watching Six Nations rugby anymore. There'll be 50,000, 60,000. Our game is
I think
built.
there'll be a bit more than that now, in fairness.
Well, what's the average viewership for a top Premiership football match on pay-per-view TV? 50 or 60,000.
Yeah, but this is international rugby. It'll probably be a few 100,000.
It's a minority game compared to soccer.
Well, in
I'm talking about in the UK.
but people watch it in the pubs now.
They do watch in the pubs, so even if you double the number, Jason, it's
Okay.
it's teensy. And I said last week about England, one of the big things that they never got to capitalise about on the World Cup win, because when those players' boots hit the ground back in England after 2003, they disappeared behind a paywall for 9 months.
Yeah, that's true.
Now we've already got the Pro 14 behind a paywall, in the main. European Rugby's behind a paywall in the main, and both are trying to come out of it as much as possible because they realise that that without mass exposure, it's killing the game. So you had European Rugby selling secondary rights to Channel 4 and to Virgin Media. You've got a free-to-air broadcaster in each of the Pro 14 regions as well. But if you take Six Nations behind a paywall, it's a disaster for the sport. It's an absolute disaster. Because as you know, it's the one time of the year where rugby's front and centre, in not just on the sports pages, it's on the front pages and it's in the front of people's consciousness.
Yeah.
If you take that out of it, that's a significant problem for the development of the game in these islands.
Yeah.
Interesting times anyway, boys. Well, thanks very much, and thanks very much for watching. Cheers.